I spent a few years playing the absolute wrong thing in 3 super famous bass lines because I was either just too lazy to learn it properly or someone told me the wrong thing to play. Super embarrassing. Hi, I'm Luke from Become a Bassist, and in this lesson I'm going to show you that it wasn't just me that messed up these 3 bass lines. They get played wrong all the time. But I'll show you what to do so you don't make the same mistakes I did and end up red-faced and humiliated. You're going to avoid all of that. Welcome to Become a Bassist, where it's all about no BS bass lessons designed to get you playing better bass, having more fun, and becoming the best bassist that you can be. And today it's all about bass lines that are played the wrong way all the time. Now, do you have bass lines of your own that you played wrong for years before you found out how to play it the right way? If so, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to see if they're different from mine. Now, I'm not talking about playing things in different positions, like, for example, playing like versus playing the same thing just in a different position down here. Like, that doesn't really matter so much. In that case, it's the same notes. It makes very little difference, and really the only people who care about that kind of thing are other bass players on the internet who have too much time on their hands. What I am talking about in this video is where you flat out play the wrong thing. And like I say, I'm talking from experience here. All the 3 of these bass lines are ones that I played wrong, sometimes for years without realizing. And I don't want that for you, so let's dive into our very first bass line. Ever heard of this? It's Play That Funky Music, right? Only that is not the bass line at all. That's the guitar part. The actual bass line goes like this. Check it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's definitely similar. Same notes. Some of them are even doubled with the guitar, but the bass line has that super heavy E on beat 1. Much more bass line-like. In fact, the first 3 notes of the bass line, they all line up with the kick drum. Yeah? Yeah, so there's that really strong connection there with the drums. Makes it way easier to set up a super fat groove. 1, 2, 3, And then you get that little fancy bit there at the end, just like that. This is so much better than the guitar part. Gross. Who would ever want to play that? Actually, this one is probably the one I played wrong for the longest amount of time. I think when I was learning this song, the guitarist just kind of told me to play the guitar part because that's what he thought the bass was doing. It wasn't until I saw another band playing this song and hearing the bass player play the actual bass line, I thought, this guy can't even learn the bass line properly. What an idiot, what a fool. Turns out I was the idiot, I was the fool because I didn't take the time to learn the song properly. And by the way, if you want to make sure that you never make these same mistakes in these bass lines, you can download the tabs and notation for all these lines for free by clicking either up here or in the description below. Just fill out the form on that page. I'll send you the PDF right away of all these bass lines so you never make the same mistakes that I and probably thousands of other bass players have made over the years. Alright, bass line number 2 played wrong. I'm sure you've heard this one before. Such a cool riff, right? It's the Temptations' My Girl. Except that is not the bass line. Again, that's the guitar part. Now this is an easy one to make this mistake on because that riff, oh my god. It's just so damn catchy, so cool. It's no wonder bass players play that instead of the actual bass line, which sounds something more like this. A lot simpler, yeah? And probably a lot less memorable, which you might think kind of sucks, but in this song, the role of the bass is to support that guitar part. And then, of course, the vocals when it comes in. I got sunshine, I got sunshine on a cloudy day. I'm not going to sing anymore. I won't subject you to that. But that bass line, it kind of glues the whole song together. If you want, you can absolutely learn the guitar part. It's a great riff made up of just like the major pentatonic scale. It's super cool, but it's not actually the bass line. The next one, our final example, is a kind of double barrel example of a bass line played wrong. And once again, I botched this one for years, and you've probably heard it before. 1, 2, 3, and... It's Stevie Wonder's Superstition, right? Again though, that's not the bass line, that's the clavinet part. The actual bass line was played on a Moog synth, actually by Stevie itself, and it sounds a bit more like this. Now, it is played on a Moog, so there's tons of intricacies in the original bass line with pitch bends and all kinds of things that aren't actually possible with a bass, but the bass line sounds roughly like this. 3, 4. Again, what we have here is an approximation because we can never play it exactly the way it was on a Moog synth, unless of course you play Moog synth. But what we've got here, it's pretty close at least. So that's what's actually happening in the bass line. Again, it's probably not quite as flashy or as easy to hear as the kind of clavinet part, but it is Stevie playing the bass part on that synth, so it must have been exactly what he wanted for the song. Now, I said this was a double barrel example, right? And that's because in the pre-chorus, there's this lick that the bass plays along with the horns, and so many people, even really good professional musicians, one that I play with regularly, they play the lick differently than what's on the recording. So here's what's actually on there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so slowed down, it sounds like this. 3, 4. Pardon me. Like that, right? Now this one's actually doubly tricky. The horns play the same thing every single time, because there's two of them, they have to play like basically the same thing. But Stevie, who plays the bass line, is kind of in unison, but it's a very rough unison. It changes every now and again, and Stevie plays different things every time. I've put a link to the isolated bass track underneath so you can check it out. Now some common variations that people play are starting with an E flat, D flat, E flat, instead of just two E flats. So going da da da, and in fact that's something Stevie does in the bass line, even though the horns don't ever do it. One change that's a little bit ambiguous is the very end of the phrase. In the original recording, the bass part goes down D flat going to E flat. So da da, D flat to E flat, but the horns just play two E flats. Da da, ba ba, da da. That's the horns. Da da, da da. D flat, E flat in the bass part sometimes. And in all honesty, either work here on the bass, and it sounds fine on the recording with the bass doing one and the horns doing the other. If you wanted to be super authentic to the bass line though, a lot of the times it is going from the D flat to the E flat, although the horns do play something else. One change that actually does make a lot of sense is kind of getting rid of that little trill thing at the end of the phrase. That one right there, and just playing a regular old D flat as kind of a longer note. Just like that. That's probably the trickiest part of the line, and if you are actually going to play it like that, everyone needs to play it in the exact same way or it can end up being a real mess. So that one, you know, fair enough if it's not exactly like the recording, that's, you know, you can have a pass on that one. Now, Superstition can be a bit tricky, so once again, if you need all the tabs and notation for these bass lines so you make sure you play them the right way, then just hit this card up here or click the link in the description underneath this lesson, fill out the form on that page, you'll get the PDF of all these lines 100% free, and you can make sure you never make any of these embarrassing mistakes ever again. Now, have you noticed a common theme with all these bass lines? When they were played wrong, they all borrowed parts of the song that were already there, right? Play that funky music style, the guitar part. Yeah, My Girl as well. And the Superstition style, the clavinet part. Yeah, it's not like when you're playing the wrong thing, it's going to sound horrible. These bass lines, even though they are the wrong thing, will sound fine if you play them that way, but if you're going for authenticity in your bass lines, then you really have to pay attention to the recordings. And remember, if you want to make sure you never play these bass lines the wrong way, make sure you go right here, download that free PDF, has all the tabs and notation of all the bass lines we went through, and if you're looking to play authentic bass lines that sound exactly like the original, I will see you in that PDF in about 60 seconds. I'll see you there.